Picture this. It's the most beautiful morning Earth has ever seen. The year is 66,040,000 BC, and you're standing on the shores of what will one day become the Gulf of Mexico. But this isn't the world you know. This is a planet alive with giants. The air shimmers with humidity, carrying the sweet perfume of flowering magnolias and the musky scent of massive creatures moving through primordial forests. Palm fronds rustle in the gentle breeze, their whisper mixing with sounds that will never again grace this planet. The thunderous footsteps of a triceratops herd heading to the water's edge, their massive three-horned heads swinging low as they drink from crystal-clear streams. The morning light dances on their thick, leathery hide, revealing scars from ancient battles and the wisdom that comes from surviving in a world of giants. Above you, the sky is painted in brilliant blues, unmarked by the contrails of jets or the haze of industry. Pteranodons soar on thermals, their 20-foot wingspans casting fleeting shadows across the lush landscape. Their calls echo across valleys filled with ferns the size of trees and trees that dwarf modern skyscrapers. These aren't the pterodactyls of Hollywood imagination, but sophisticated flying reptiles with keen intelligence gleaming in their large eyes, their bodies covered in fine fur-like filaments that catch the morning light like spun gold. But here's what makes this morning truly perfect and truly tragic. No creature on Earth knows that in exactly 14 hours and 37 minutes their world will end. Not the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex stalking through the forest, each footstep sending tremors through the earth that can be felt for miles. This particular Rex, a battle-scarred female standing 13 feet tall at the hip, moves with the confidence of an apex predator that has never known defeat. Her 6-inch teeth gleam like ivory daggers in the dapple sunlight filtering through the canopy. Not the gentle Edmontosaurus, grazing in herds, so vast they stretch beyond the horizon. These duck-billed dinosaurs, each weighing as much as a modern elephant, move across the landscape like a living carpet of brown and green. Their sophisticated social calls, honks, trumpets, and whistles that would put modern geese to shame, create a symphony of communication that coordinates the movement of thousands of individuals across hundreds of miles. Not even the smallest mammals scurrying through the underbrush, destined to inherit a broken world. These aren't the tiny, cowering creatures of popular imagination, but sophisticated beings, some as large as modern cats, with complex social structures and remarkable intelligence. A mother tends to her young in a carefully constructed burrow, teaching them the skills they'll need to survive in a world dominated by giants, skills that, unknown to her, will become the foundation of mammalian success in the world to come. The sun rises on the Cretaceous period just as it has for millions of years, warming the faces of creatures that have ruled this planet longer than humans have existed. The morning light catches the iridescent feathers of a Dakota raptor as it preens, unaware that it's performing its final grooming ritual. Each feather is a masterpiece of evolution, designed for display, insulation, and aerodynamics, a complexity that took millions of years to perfect and will be lost in a single day. Somewhere in the distance, a triceratops calf takes its very first steps, wobbling on legs that will never grow strong enough to carry it to adulthood. Its mother watches with the patient devotion that defines her species, unaware that this moment of pure joy is shadowed by approaching doom. The calf's tiny horns are just beginning to emerge, promise of the magnificent crown it will never live to grow. This is a story of the last day, not just of the dinosaurs, but of an entire world. It's a story written in rock, told by bones, and confirmed by the very elements scattered in Earth's crust. Every fossil we uncover, every chemical signature we decode, adds another sentence to this epic tale of life and loss, and it begins with beauty so profound that even 66 million years later, we're still discovering just how magnificent this lost world truly was. The clock is ticking, the asteroid is coming, and Earth's greatest creatures are about to face their final test. The Cretaceous world awakens like a symphony of the primordial. As dawn breaks across North America, the very air seems to pulse with life. The oxygen content is higher than today's atmosphere, nearly 23% compared to our modern 21%, making every breath richer, every movement more energetic. This supercharged atmosphere fuels metabolisms that would be impossible in our modern world, allowing creatures to grow to sizes that defy modern imagination. In the forests of what we now call Montana, a family of triceratops begins their morning ritual. The patriarch, a massive bull weighing nearly 10 tons, scrapes his 3-foot-long horns against the bark of a giant sequoia. The sound reverberates through the forest like a bass drum, a territorial announcement that can be heard for miles. His mate, equally impressive at 8 tons, tends to their month-old calf, a creature already the size of a small car, its tiny horns just beginning to emerge from its skull. Recent research suggests these magnificent creatures may have formed complex social structures, with evidence pointing to sophisticated group behaviors that went far beyond simple herding. The forest floor beneath their feet tells its own story of abundance. Flowering plants have revolutionized this world over the past 40 million years, creating an explosion of color and scent that would make even the most exotic modern rainforest seem bland by comparison. Magnolias the size of dinner plates perfume the air with their vanilla sweetness, while primitive roses and water lilies add splashes of pink and white to the green tapestry. The ground is carpeted with a thick layer of decomposing plant matter that feeds an intricate ecosystem of insects, small reptiles, and early mammals. But it's not just the gentle giants that make this world remarkable. In the towering conifers above, small theropod dinosaurs, feathered creatures no larger than modern chickens, fill ecological niches that birds occupy today. Their complex calls weave through the canopy, some melodic like songbirds, others harsh and guttural like ravens. These are not the monsters of movie screens, but sophisticated creatures with complex social behaviors, intricate mating displays, and parental care that rivals modern birds. Their feathers, evolved from simple filamentous structures, shimmer with iridescent colours that serve both for camouflage and courtship displays. Near Sierra Bend, in an ancient river, a different kind of drama unfolds. A Dakota raptor, standing 6 feet tall and stretching 17 feet from snout to tail, has caught the scent of a recent kill. Its sickle-shaped toe claws click against the wet earth as it approaches cautiously, head tilted to listen for the slightest sound. This is intelligence in action, not the cold reptilian cunning of crocodiles, but something warmer, more bird-like, calculating yet emotional. The creature's large brain, relative to its body size, suggests cognitive abilities that may have rivaled those of modern birds. The killer claw that makes this creature famous isn't just a weapon, it's a precision instrument. As the raptor investigates a fallen log, that terrible claw delicately probes bark crevices, searching for insects, with the same dexterity a surgeon might use to examine a patient. The claw's robust flexor tubercle, larger relative to size than in other dromaeosaurids, suggests this predator possessed the strongest slashing power of any known member of its family. Yet here it demonstrates the remarkable versatility that made these creatures such successful predators, equal parts brute force and delicate precision. As the morning progresses, the sounds of the Cretaceous world create a chorus unlike anything heard before or since. The deep resonant calls of sauropods echo from distant valleys, their necks swaying like living towers among the trees. Pteranodons cry overhead as they ride the morning thermals, their calls mixing with the splash of diving fish-eating reptiles in the nearby streams, and the rustle of countless small creatures moving. The climate of this world is utterly different from our own, with global temperatures averaging 10 to 15 degrees higher than today. Even the polar regions enjoy temperate conditions that would seem tropical by modern standards. There are no ice caps, no frozen tundra, just an endless expanse of life-supporting warmth that extends from equator to pole. The greenhouse atmosphere, rich in carbon dioxide from massive volcanic activity, creates a world where winter is merely a season of slightly less warmth rather than the killing frost that dominates modern climates. In the shallow inland seas that cover much of central North America, marine life thrives in warm, nutrient-rich waters. Massive marine reptiles patrol these ancient oceans. Mosasaurs, the size of modern sperm whales. Long-necked elasmosaurs that snake through the water, like living sea serpents. And countless species of ammonites, whose spiral shells create living galaxies in the clear water. These inland seas, connected to the global ocean system, teem with life forms that will vanish forever when the asteroid strikes. This is a world in perfect balance, refined by 165 million years of dinosaurian dominance into an ecological masterpiece. Every niche is filled, every relationship perfected through eons of evolutionary fine-tuning. The Triceratops family continues their morning routine, unaware that they are participants in the final act of the longest-running drama in Earth's history. In just a few hours, this perfect world will begin its transformation into something else entirely, a crucible that will forge the future of life on Earth. While Earth's creatures go about their morning routines, something unimaginable hurtles through the void of space. It's been travelling for millions of years, a mountain of rock and metal roughly 6 miles wide, about the size of Manhattan, carrying the destructive power of 5 billion atomic bombs. This celestial assassin, later named the Chicxulub impactor, moves at an incomprehensible 45,000 miles per hour, 20 times faster than a rifle bullet, faster than anything evolution has ever prepared Earth's inhabitants to comprehend. The asteroid's journey began in the far reaches of the solar system, possibly originating from a collision in the asteroid belt that sent this fragment of primordial rock careening toward the inner planets. For eons, it has travelled through the cold darkness, a piece of the early solar system, carrying within its metallic heart the elements that will forever change Earth's geological record. Its surface, pitted and scarred by millions of years of micrometeorite impacts, bears no resemblance to any earthly rock. It is alien in every sense, a visitor from the deep time of planetary formation. Back on Earth, the morning continues with breathtaking normalcy. In the shallow seas that cover much of central North America, marine reptiles that dwarf modern whales cruise through waters teeming with ammonites. Spiral-shelled creatures that pump through the water like living nautiluses, some no bigger than coins, others with shells 6 feet across. These ancient seas, warm and crystal clear, support an ecosystem of staggering diversity. Rudis bivalves, massive clam-like creatures, form reef structures that stretch for hundreds of miles, creating underwater cities that house countless species of fish, arthropods, and microscopic life. A mosasaur, 50 feet of pure predatory power, glides through these ancient seas with the grace of a serpent and the bulk of a sperm whale. Its massive jaws, lined with teeth like railroad spikes, snap shut on an unsuspecting ammonite with a crack that echoes through the water like breaking stone. This is routine, a moment of violence and consumption that has played out countless times in these seas. The mosasaur's intelligence, revealed in recent studies of their brain cavity size, suggests these creatures possess cognitive abilities that rivaled those of modern marine mammals. They hunted in coordinated groups, communicated through complex vocalizations, and showed evidence of sophisticated social behaviors. But there's something different about this particular morning, something subtle that only the most sensitive creatures might notice. High-altitude winds carry the faintest trace of cosmic dust, debris from the approaching asteroid as Earth's gravity begins to strip away its outer layers. It's nothing visible, nothing that would alarm even the most paranoid prey animal, just a barely perceptible change in the taste of the air, a microscopic shower of particles that rain down like invisible snow. The magnetic field of Earth itself begins to fluctuate slightly as the massive metallic asteroid approaches, creating electromagnetic disturbances that register only as the faintest whisper in the planet's geophysical systems. Some of the more sensitive dinosaurs might feel it, a strange restlessness, an indefinable urge to seek shelter. Modern animals often exhibit unusual behavior before earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, sensing vibrations and changes in electromagnetic fields that humans can't detect. Perhaps some of the Cretaceous giants feel that same primitive warning now, a whisper in their bones that something is terribly wrong with the world. A flock of pterosaurs circles restlessly above their usual roosting grounds, their calls more agitated than usual. A herd of Edmontosaurus grazes with heads raised more frequently than normal, as if listening for some sound that doesn't come. But evolution hasn't prepared them for what's coming. No instinct, no matter how finely tuned, could anticipate an extinction event triggered by a visitor from the depths of space. The asteroid continues its relentless approach, now close enough that if any Cretaceous creature possessed the technology to see it, it would appear as a growing speck of light against the star field, brightening with each passing hour. Its gravitational pull begins to interact with Earth's own gravity well, subtly altering tidal patterns and atmospheric pressure systems in ways too minute for any living being to detect. The forests continue their ancient routines, unaware that they are living through the final hours of a world that has existed for 165 million years. The great conifers, some over 1,000 years old, stand as living monuments to the stability of the Cretaceous climate. Their massive trunks, thick with protective bark that has shielded them from countless fires and storms, cannot protect them from what approaches. Flowering vines climb toward their canopy, reaching for sunlight they will never again enjoy. The forest floor, carpeted with the accumulated debris of millennia, teems with life that has no concept of its own mortality. In the ocean depths, where no light has penetrated for millions of years, bottom-dwelling creatures continue their slow existence, feeding on the constant rain of organic matter from the surface waters above. These deep-sea communities, stable for eons, will be among the few to survive what's coming, protected by miles of water from the thermal pulse and debris rain that will sterilize the surface world. But even they will face starvation as the food chain above them collapses. As the day progresses and the asteroid draws ever closer, the very atoms in Earth's upper atmosphere begin to react to the approaching mass. Solar wind patterns shift almost imperceptibly. The planet's magnetosphere develops tiny fluctuations that won't be detected for millions of years, until future scientists develop instruments sensitive enough to read the traces in ancient ice cores. These subtle changes mark the final countdown to an event that will rewrite the rules of life on Earth and set the stage for the rise of mammals, and eventually beings capable of understanding and mourning what was lost on this perfect morning 66 million years ago. At exactly 5:47 p.m. Cretaceous Standard Time, the impossible becomes reality. The asteroid strikes the shallow seas off the coast of Mexico with the force of 100 trillion tons of TNT. In the first microsecond of impact, temperatures at ground zero reach 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the Sun. The asteroid doesn't gradually penetrate Earth's surface. It vaporizes instantly, along with a massive chunk of the planet itself. The impact releases approximately 123 joules of energy, equivalent to 5 billion atomic bombs detonating simultaneously. The impact crater forms in seconds, not years. Rock that took millions of years to form explodes outward in a fountain of molten material that reaches halfway to the moon. The blast generates a core of superheated plasma, expanding outward at tremendous speeds, vaporizing everything within hundreds of miles. The shockwave travels through Earth's crust at 25,000 miles per hour, faster than the planet rotates, racing across continents like ripples in a pond, but ripples that can level mountains and liquefy solid rock. Within minutes, the impact ejects several thousand gigatons of asteroidal and target material at velocities exceeding 5 kilometers per second. The most severely shocked rocks are launched at speeds greater than 11 kilometers per second, faster than Earth's escape velocity, sending debris cascading across the solar system. This high-velocity ejector interacts with Earth's atmosphere to form a fast-moving cloud that carries dust, soot, sulfate aerosols, and other debris around the entire planet within just 4 to 5 hours of impact. In Montana, nearly 2,000 miles from the impact site, a triceratops herd is still peacefully grazing when the ground beneath their feet begins to shake. At first, it's barely perceptible, no more alarming than the footsteps of one of their own kind. But within seconds, the tremors intensify into a seismic pulse, roughly equivalent to a magnitude 10 earthquake. Ancient trees that have stood for centuries begin to sway, their massive trunks groaning with sounds like breaking ship masts as forces beyond comprehension tear through the Earth's crust. The dinosaurs look up from their feeding, massive heads swiveling in confusion. Their brains, though small compared to their enormous bodies, are sophisticated enough to recognize that something is catastrophically wrong. The matriarch of the herd, a scarred veteran of countless seasons, trumpets a warning call that echoes across the valley. Her call is answered by others, creating a crescendo of alarm that spreads through the herd like wildfire. But there's nowhere to run from what comes next. The seismic waves arrive like a freight train made of Earth itself. The ground doesn't just shake, it liquefies under the tremendous forces. Massive sequoias, some over 200 feet tall and centuries old, topple like matchsticks. Boulders the size of houses bounce across the landscape like pebbles skipping on water. The triceratops herd, despite weighing as much as modern elephants, are thrown to the ground as if they weigh nothing at all, their massive bodies tumbling helplessly as the very foundations of their world betray them. The impact has launched trillions of tiny glass spherules, microscopic droplets of molten rock, into the upper atmosphere. These spherules, no bigger than grains of sand, now rain down across the entire planet in a deadly shower that will continue for hours. As they streak through the atmosphere at tremendous speeds, they glow white hot from friction, turning Earth's sky into a cosmic oven that can be seen from space. Then comes the heat. The re-entering ejector creates a thermal pulse that increases global temperatures by 30 degrees Fahrenheit within minutes. This isn't a gradual warming, this is an instantaneous transformation of Earth's entire atmosphere into a furnace. The thermal radiation is so intense that it can ignite vegetation across entire continents simultaneously, even at distances of thousands of miles from the impact site. The sky becomes bright enough to cause immediate burns on exposed skin. The air blast and pressure pulse radiate outward from the impact site at speeds far exceeding the speed of sound. Near the impact site, winds in excess of 1,000 kilometers per hour scour the landscape clean, stripping away soils and shredding any vegetation or animals unlucky enough to be in their path. The pressure wave extends in a devastating radius of approximately 1,500 kilometers, though some estimates suggest it could reach as far as 1,800 kilometers from ground zero. The blast generates massive landslides on the seafloor, ripping through colonies of marine life that have existed peacefully for millions of years. Tsunami waves hundreds of feet high race across the ancient inland seas, carrying the debris of destroyed ecosystems thousands of miles from their origin. The very ocean basins are reshaped in minutes as underwater mountain ranges collapse, and new ones are thrust upward by forces that dwarf anything in recorded geological history. In the growing twilight of impact, something profound and terrible is beginning. The fast-moving cloud of debris now circling the planet contains more than just rock and metal. It carries with it over 200 gigatons of sulfur dioxide and water vapor, along with more than 500 gigatons of carbon dioxide, all injected directly into the stratosphere. This toxic cocktail will soon begin its deadly work, transforming Earth's climate system in ways that will persist for years to come. The perfect morning that began just hours ago is ending in the most catastrophic event in the history of complex life on Earth. As the first day of the apocalypse wears on, a different kind of story begins to unfold. One of survival against impossible odds. 3 months after impact, the temperature spike has given way to something far more insidious, a creeping cold that signals the beginning of Earth's nuclear winter. The massive quantities of debris launched into the atmosphere now begin their deadly work, blocking sunlight with the efficiency of a planetary window shade. What began as a world on fire is rapidly transforming into a world of perpetual twilight and killing frost. Deep underground, in burrows that honeycombed the Cretaceous landscape, early mammals press themselves against cool earth walls. These aren't the mammals of popular imagination. Tiny, shrew-like creatures, cowering in perpetual fear. These are sophisticated survivors, some as large as modern beavers, with complex social structures and remarkable adaptability that evolution has refined over 150 million years. Their ability to regulate body temperature internally, combined with their small size and efficient metabolisms, makes them uniquely suited to survive in a world where the rules of survival have been completely rewritten. One such survivor, a furry creature about the size of a house cat, huddles with her 3 pups in a burrow system she spent months perfecting. The tunnel extends 6 feet underground, far enough to escape the worst of the surface heat, deep enough to find the water table that keeps the earth cool and moist. As the world above burns and then freezes, she nurses her young with the patience born of mammalian evolution. her body temperature a constant 98 degrees in a world where surface temperatures now swing wildly between extremes that would kill any cold-blooded creature. But mammals aren't the only survivors. In the swamps and marshlands scattered across the continent, a different kind of refugee camp forms. Crocodilians, essentially unchanged from their modern descendants, sink into the mud with only their eyes and nostrils above water. Their cold-blooded metabolism, often seen as primitive, now becomes a survival advantage. They can slow their heart rates, reduce their oxygen consumption, and simply wait. Some species can survive without food for over a year when necessary, their bodies efficiently recycling nutrients while they remain motionless in the cooling water. The water itself provides protection from both the initial heat and the growing cold, but it also becomes a gathering place for desperate creatures. A wounded triceratops burns covering much of his back from the thermal pulse, wades into a shallow lake, alongside pterosaurs whose wing membranes are singed and torn. Natural enemies become allies in the face of extinction, their ancient territorial instincts overridden by the simple need to find relief from the hostile environment their world has become. The scene in this impromptu refuge would be touching if it weren't so tragic. A mother Maiasaura, a dinosaur whose name means good mother lizard, guides her surviving offspring into the cooling water. Of her original clutch of 15 eggs, only 3 babies survived to hatching. Now only one remains alive, a creature no larger than a modern turkey, pressing close to her massive flank as ash begins to fall like grey snow. Her maternal instincts, refined over millions of years of evolution, compel her to shield her offspring from the falling ash with her own body. But she cannot shield it from the cold that seeps deeper into its small bones with each passing hour. The ash changes everything. These aren't the light fluffy flakes of a wood fire, but dense particles of pulverized rock, hot enough to burn exposed skin and heavy enough to collapse the strongest branches. Each flake carries a story of impact. Microscopic fragments of the asteroid itself, mixed with vaporized limestone from the impact crater, spread now across the entire planet by high-altitude winds. The ash accumulates with relentless persistence, burying the familiar landscape under an alien grey blanket that grows thicker by the hour. The smaller creatures face an immediate crisis. Birds that survived the initial thermal pulse now struggle with ash clogging their respiratory systems. Their sophisticated air sacs, evolved for the high energy demands of flight, become liability as the fine particles infiltrate their lungs. Many simply suffocate, their bodies found days later buried under the growing ash layer. Those that survive do so by seeking shelter in caves, hollow logs, or dense vegetation that offer some protection from the deadly particulate rain. The herbivorous dinosaurs face a different but equally deadly challenge. The ash contaminates every plant surface, turning their food sources toxic. A family of Edmontosaurus, already stressed by the temperature extremes, now finds that every bite of vegetation comes with a mouthful of abrasive particles that wear down their teeth and clog their digestive systems. Their sophisticated dental batteries, perfectly adapted for processing tough Cretaceous vegetation, become liability as the ash acts like sandpaper in their mouths. But in this world of ash and dying light, the first hints of natural selection at work become visible. The creatures that survive these first critical days possess specific traits that will determine the future of life on Earth. The mammals, with the most efficient metabolisms and best insulation, survive longest in their burrows. The crocodilians, with the slowest metabolisms, can wait out the crisis in their muddy refuges. The birds, with the most efficient respiratory systems, can clear ash from their lungs and continue flying. The few plants with underground storage organs can survive even when their surface growth dies back completely. As night falls on this transformed world, the darkness is profound in ways that no Cretaceous creature has ever experienced. The sun, when visible at all through the ash-choked atmosphere, appears as nothing more than a dim orange disk. The temperature drops below freezing, for the first time in millions of years, across vast stretches of the continent. Ice begins to form on the surface of pools where just hours before, desperate creatures sought relief from unbearable heat. The Age of Giants is ending not just in fire, but in ice. A planet-wide winter that will test every survival strategy evolution has ever devised. By the end of the first day, Earth's climate system has fundamentally broken down. The massive amount of debris launched into the atmosphere begins to block sunlight with the efficiency of a planetary window shade. Temperatures that spiked dramatically in the first hours now begin a deadly plummet toward a nuclear winter that will last for months. The Chicxulub impact has injected over 500 gigatons of carbon dioxide and more than 200 gigatons of sulfur dioxide directly into the stratosphere, creating a toxic cocktail that will persist in Earth's upper atmosphere for years to come. The darkness isn't complete, but it's profound. Even at what should be midday, the sky glows with the eerie orange light of a world on fire, filtered through billions of tons of suspended ash and dust. The sun, when visible at all, appears as a dim red disk, like looking at a flashlight through thick fog. Photosynthesis, the fundamental process that has powered Earth's ecosystems for billions of years, begins to shut down as light levels drop to less than 1% of normal. The magnificent flowering forests of the Cretaceous, which took millions of years to evolve, begin their death spiral in a matter of days. This is when the real dying begins. Plants, the foundation of every food chain, start shutting down across the globe. Without adequate sunlight, photosynthesis slows to a crawl, then stops entirely. The great conifers that have dominated Earth's forests for hundreds of millions of years begin to wither, their needle-like leaves turning brown and dropping like organic snow. Flowering plants, those recent evolutionary innovations that transform the Cretaceous world into a garden paradise, are among the most vulnerable. Their broad leaves, perfectly designed to capture sunlight, become liability in a world where light itself has become a precious commodity. The herbivorous dinosaurs face starvation first. A triceratops needs to consume 400 pounds of plant matter daily to fuel its massive metabolism. But the ferns are wilting, the conifers are dying, and the flowering plants are dropping their leaves like confetti at a funeral. The great herds that once darkened the plains like living thunderclouds now scatter in desperate searches for food that simply doesn't exist. Their sophisticated social structures, refined over millions of years, begin to break down as desperation overrides evolutionary programming. Family groups that have travelled together for decades split apart as parents abandon offspring in the primal drive to find nutrition. The carnivorous dinosaurs might seem better positioned to survive. After all, meat doesn't depend directly on photosynthesis, but their food sources are the herbivores, and as the plant eaters die, the predators face their own arithmetic of doom. A Tyrannosaurus rex requires nearly 300 pounds of meat per day to sustain its massive frame and high-energy lifestyle. With herbivorous dinosaurs dying by the millions, even the king of predators finds itself in a losing battle against starvation. The territorial boundaries that once regulated predator populations dissolve, as T-Rex individuals are forced to compete for the same dwindling supply of carrion. But in the growing darkness, some creatures find opportunity in catastrophe. The early mammals, with their higher metabolisms and smaller size, can survive on scraps that wouldn't sustain a creature even 1/10 the size of a dinosaur. A mouse-sized mammal can live for weeks on what a dinosaur consumes in a single bite. More importantly, their sophisticated thermoregulatory systems allow them to maintain body temperature even as the ambient temperature continues to drop. Their fur evolved over millions of years of living in the shadows of giants, now becomes their salvation in a world growing colder by the day. Scavenging becomes the primary survival strategy across the dying world. The landscape is littered with carcasses, creatures that died from heat, impact injuries, or the toxic gases released by the global fires. For the survivors, this represents a macabre feast that can sustain them through the darkest months ahead. Crocodilians, their slow metabolisms allowing them to survive months without feeding, emerge from their muddy refuges to feed on the bounty of death surrounding them. Early birds, those dinosaur descendants equipped with the intelligence to adapt quickly to changing conditions, learn to exploit this abundance with surprising efficiency. The temperature continues its relentless descent. Within weeks of the impact, global average temperatures drop by 18 degrees Fahrenheit below normal levels. For a world accustomed to the warm, stable climate of the Cretaceous greenhouse, this represents a shock as profound as the initial thermal pulse. Ice begins to form for the first time in millions of years across vast regions of the planet. The polar regions, once temperate forests filled with dinosaur life, become frozen wastelands virtually overnight in geological terms. The marine environment faces its own version of nuclear winter. With the collapse of photosynthesis in oceanic plankton, the base of the marine food web disappears almost immediately. Massive marine reptiles like mosasaurs, perfectly adapted to their aquatic world for millions of years, find themselves in ocean deserts where their prey has simply vanished. The great ammonite populations, those spiral-shelled masters of the Mesozoic seas, begin their final decline as the microscopic organisms they depend on die en masse. Yet even in this world of death and darkness, the seeds of recovery are being planted. The few plant species with underground storage organs, bulbs, rhizomes, and root systems that can survive even when their surface growth dies, represent the genetic banks of the future. Fern spores, those hardy reproductive units that can survive extreme conditions for years, drift through the toxic atmosphere, waiting for the day when light will return to Earth. These microscopic survivors will be among the first to reclaim the devastated landscape when the nuclear winter finally ends. The few large animals that survive these first critical months do so through combinations of unique adaptations. Crocodilians can slow their metabolisms to near hibernation levels. Early mammals can regulate their body temperature internally while consuming minimal calories. Some bird species can migrate vast distances in search of the few remaining pockets of viable habitat. But the great dinosaurs, those magnificent giants that have ruled Earth for 165 million years, lack these crucial survival traits. They are caught between their massive energy requirements and a world that can no longer meet those needs. As the nuclear winter deepens and the darkness becomes more profound, it becomes clear that this is not just the end of the dinosaurs, but the end of an entire way of life. The Mesozoic era, with its warm climates, lush vegetation, and giant reptilian rulers, is giving way to something entirely new. In the growing cold and darkness, the survivors are writing the opening chapters of the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, the age of flowers, and ultimately the age of intelligence. The nuclear winter that dooms the giants also clears the evolutionary stage for life forms that will eventually produce beings capable of understanding and mourning what was lost in these terrible months of darkness and cold. 3 months after impact, the Cretaceous world has become unrecognizable. The once lush forests stand like graveyards of leafless skeletons, their branches brittle and black against an alien sky. The temperature has dropped 20 degrees below normal, and frost coats the ground, even in what used to be tropical regions. This is the heart of nuclear winter, a world where the very concept of seasons has been obliterated, replaced by a single endless winter that stretches across every continent. The great ice sheets that had been absent from Earth for over 100 million years begin to form again, creeping down from polar regions like frozen fingers, reclaiming the planet. In this alien landscape, the last of the great dinosaurs make their final stand. A solitary Triceratops bull, once the proud leader of a herd of hundreds, now wanders alone through the ash-covered wasteland. His magnificent frill, evolved over millions of years to display his strength and attract mates, is now dulled by malnutrition and covered with sores from toxic ash. Each breath is laboured, not just from hunger, but from the particulates in the air that clog his massive lungs and create a persistent, rasping cough that echoes through the empty landscape. His search for food has become increasingly desperate and futile. He strips bark from dead trees, the woody material passing through his sophisticated digestive system without providing meaningful nutrition. He consumes woody stems that his four-chambered stomach cannot process, and even attempts to eat the bitter toxic leaves of the few plants that still cling to life in this hostile world. His body, designed by evolution to be a perfect herbivorous machine, is slowly consuming itself in the absence of adequate nutrition. The fat reserves that once sustained him through winter seasons are long gone, and now his own muscle mass begins to break down to fuel his massive metabolism. The scene plays out across the continent with heartbreaking consistency. A mother Edmontosaurus, her milk dried up weeks ago, watches helplessly as her last surviving offspring grows weaker each day. The youngster, barely larger than a modern deer, lacks the body mass to survive the extended starvation that might not kill an adult for several more weeks. Its calls for food become increasingly faint, until finally they stop altogether. The mother continues to nudge the small body for days, unable to comprehend that her offspring will never rise again. Even the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, apex predator of the Cretaceous world for millions of years, faces defeat by an enemy it cannot fight or intimidate. A massive female, scarred veteran of countless hunts, discovers the frozen carcass of a Triceratops that died weeks earlier. But the meat is toxic, contaminated by the ash and chemicals that poison everything in this new world. She feeds anyway, because the alternative is certain death by starvation. The toxic meal will kill her slowly over the next several days, but at least it postpones the immediate agony of hunger. Her powerful jaws, capable of crushing bone, now struggle to tear flesh that has become hard as leather in the freezing temperatures. The smaller theropods, the intelligent bird-like dinosaurs that might have been the ancestors of modern birds if given more time, prove remarkably resourceful in these final months. Some learn to dig through the ash to find frozen insects, their delicate claws surprisingly effective at excavating in the hardened ground. Others develop primitive tool use, employing sticks and stones to probe crevices for any scrap of nutrition. A few species even exhibit cooperative behavior, working together to share the meager food resources they manage to find. But intelligence and adaptability can only delay the inevitable when the entire ecosystem has collapsed. The marine environment tells its own story of collapse. Massive marine reptiles that once ruled the ancient seas now beach themselves in increasing numbers, their sophisticated echolocation systems unable to locate prey in oceans that have become biological deserts. A 40-foot mosasaur, once the undisputed master of its aquatic domain, struggles in the shallows of what was once a thriving reef ecosystem. Its powerful tail, evolved for high-speed pursuit of prey, now barely has the strength to propel its massive body through water that has become too cold and too barren to support life. The last of the great pterosaurs face their own unique challenges in this transformed world. These magnificent flying reptiles, some with wingspans exceeding 35 feet, find themselves grounded as their food sources vanish and their energy reserves dwindle. A Quetzalcoatlus, one of the largest flying animals in Earth's history, makes one final desperate flight across the barren landscape, its massive wings struggling against air that has become thin and cold. The thermal currents that once carried these giants effortlessly across continents have vanished with the dying forests, and without these natural elevators, flight becomes impossible for creatures of such immense size. The social structures that defined many dinosaur species begin to break down completely under the stress of mass starvation. Herds that maintained complex hierarchies for millions of years dissolve into desperate individual struggles for survival. A gathering of triceratops that once represented a sophisticated social system now degenerates into aggressive competition over the few remaining edible plants. Mothers abandon their young when they can no longer produce milk, and territorial boundaries that were once respected for life are violated as desperation overrides evolutionary programming. Yet even in these darkest hours, there are moments of profound beauty and dignity. A pair of Dakota raptors, having lost their entire pack to starvation, remain together until the end. They huddle close for warmth, their magnificent feathers now dull and ragged, but their bond unbroken by the catastrophe that surrounds them. When one finally succumbs to the cold and hunger, the other remains beside the body for days, calling softly with sounds that seem almost like mourning, a final testament to the emotional complexity of these remarkable creatures. As winter deepens and the darkness becomes more complete, the great symphony of the Cretaceous world fades to silence. The thunderous footsteps that shook the earth for 165 million years grow still. The territorial roars that echoed across valleys fade to whispers, then to nothing at all. One by one, the giants that defined an entire era of Earth's history close their eyes for the final time, leaving behind a world forever changed by their absence. The Age of Reptiles, the longest running dynasty in the history of complex life, comes to an end not with the violence of their fictional portrayals, but with the quiet dignity of creatures who lived, loved, and died as the masters of their world for longer than any other group in Earth's history. In the burrows beneath the ash-covered landscape, small mammals emerge, blinking into a transformed world. These are not the cowering victims of popular imagination, but the inheritors of Earth, creatures whose ancestors survived the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, and who will now have their chance to fill the empty niches left by the extinct giants. A family of early primates, no larger than modern squirrels, discovers a world of unprecedented opportunity. Trees that once towered beyond their reach have toppled, their massive trunks providing highways through the recovering forest. Without the constant threat of dinosaur predators, these small mammals can explore territories that were death traps just months before. The most fundamental change sweeping through the survivor communities is behavioral. For over 150 million years, mammals were creatures of the night, forced by dinosaur dominance to live furtive, shadowy lives. But now, for the first time in mammalian history, daylight belongs to them. early mammals begin to emerge during daylight hours, their eyes adapting to process the dim light filtering through the ash-choked atmosphere. This shift from nocturnal to diurnal living represents one of the most profound behavioral changes in mammalian evolution, setting the stage for the development of color vision, complex social behaviors, and eventually intelligence, sophisticated enough to contemplate the stars. In the recovering wetlands, early ungulates, the ancestors of horses, cattle, and countless other mammal groups, wade through marshes where duck-billed dinosaurs once gathered in enormous herds. These early mammals, some no bigger than house cats, possess something the dinosaurs never developed: a sophisticated system of parental care that includes extended learning periods and complex social behaviors. Unlike the relatively simple parenting strategies of most dinosaurs, these mammals invest enormous energy in teaching their young, passing down not just genetic traits, but learned behaviors that can adapt rapidly to changing conditions. The birds that survived, and not all did, find themselves in a world with unlimited opportunities. Without pterosaurs to compete with for aerial niches, these dinosaur descendants begin an explosive adaptive radiation that will eventually produce over 18,000 species. Some will become giants themselves, like the terrorbirds that will rule post-Cretaceous South America, with beaks capable of crushing bone. Others will remain small and develop the complex songs and brilliant colours that make modern birds so remarkable. The key to their survival appears to have been their beaks. These specialised feeding tools allowed them to exploit seeds and other foods that remained available, even when insects and other prey became scarce. But perhaps the most important survivors are the most humble: the insects, worms, and microscopic creatures that form the foundation of every food web. These tiny survivors, protected by their small size and rapid reproduction rates, begin the slow work of rebuilding the world's ecosystems from the ground up. Earthworms, virtually indestructible in their ability to survive environmental catastrophes, begin processing the ash-enriched soil, their activities creating the foundation for plant recovery. Beetles, flies, and other insects that can feed on carrion find abundant resources in the landscape of death, their populations exploding as they process the organic remains of the Cretaceous world. Seeds buried in the ash begin to sprout as the debris finally settles and thin shafts of sunlight penetrate the atmosphere. The first new forests won't look anything like the Cretaceous jungles. They'll be dominated by fast-growing species that can quickly colonize disturbed ground. Ferns, those ancient survivors that have weathered every extinction in Earth's history, are among the first to return, their hardy spores germinating in the ash-enriched soil. But the most significant change is the rise of grasses, barely present in the Cretaceous world. These remarkable plants will spread across the continents and create entirely new ecosystems that favour speed and intelligence over size and strength. The mammalian survivors show remarkable innovation in their feeding strategies. With traditional food sources scarce, they develop new ways to extract nutrition from their environment. Some learn to crack open the seeds of surviving plants, their jaw muscles strengthening and their teeth adapting for new functions. Others develop longer digestive tracts that can process the tough fibrous vegetation that dominates the early recovery period. These dietary innovations, driven by necessity, will become the foundation for the incredible diversity of mammalian feeding strategies that characterizes the modern world. 1 year after the impact, Earth begins to reveal the template for its future. The massive die-off has cleared ecological space for evolutionary experimentation on a scale rarely seen in the planet's history. What emerges from the ashes of the Cretaceous world is not simply a replacement cast of characters, but an entirely new way of organizing life on Earth. The rules of survival have been rewritten, and the creatures that will inherit this new world are those that can adapt, learn, and innovate, rather than simply overpower their competition through size and strength. In the forests of what will become Europe, a small shrew-like creature gives birth to a litter that carries genetic innovations that will echo through 66 million years of evolution. One of her offspring carries a mutation that will slightly improve brain development, a change so minor it would be invisible to any observer, yet it represents the first step toward the cognitive abilities that will eventually allow mammals to develop language, art, and science. Another pup has a genetic change that will lead to better color vision, enabling its descendants to distinguish ripe fruits from unripe ones with greater precision, providing a survival advantage in the new world of flowering plants. These tiny variations, meaningless in the shadow of the great extinction, will become the building blocks of every mammalian lineage that follows. The early primates developing in the tree canopy carry genes that will eventually produce opposable thumbs and the enlarged brain regions responsible for tool use. The ancestors of horses carry mutations that will allow their descendants to develop the elongated limbs and specialized digestive systems needed for life on open grasslands. Each small mammal represents a living experiment in adaptation. Their genetic diversity, the raw material from which evolution will craft the magnificent array of modern mammals. The ocean tells its own story of renewal and transformation. With the great marine reptiles gone, early whales, still tiny land-dwelling mammals, take their first tentative steps into aquatic life. Some develop webbed feet for swimming in coastal marshes, their bone density changing to make underwater locomotion more efficient. Others grow longer tails for propulsion through water, their spinal columns adapting to the undulating motion that will eventually characterize whale swimming. These seemingly minor adaptations are the first steps in one of evolution's most remarkable transformations, the return of mammals to the sea, from which all life originally emerged. Within just a few million years, their descendants will become the ocean's new giants, with blue whales eventually exceeding even the largest dinosaurs in size. But size alone doesn't define success in the post-extinction world. These marine mammals will also develop sophisticated echolocation systems, complex social behaviors, and brain structures that suggest intelligence rivaling that of primates. The vacant ocean niches left by extinct marine reptiles become laboratories for evolutionary innovation, producing creatures that combine the best aspects of their dinosaur predecessors with entirely new capabilities. But the most profound change isn't in what lives, but in how life works. The Cretaceous world was dominated by size. Bigger was almost always better when it came to survival. Massive herbivores could access food sources unavailable to smaller creatures, and gigantic predators could take down prey that would be impossible for smaller hunters to tackle. The post-extinction world inverts this relationship, rewarding intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation over brute strength. Brain size begins to increase across multiple mammalian lineages, not because larger brains are inherently better, but because intelligence becomes the key to survival in a rapidly changing world. This shift creates opportunities for entirely new forms of life to emerge. Early horses, no larger than dogs, develop the speed and intelligence to survive in open grasslands that didn't exist in the dinosaur age. Their legs elongate and their digestive systems become more efficient at processing the tough grasses that now dominate many ecosystems. More importantly, they develop the social intelligence to live in herds, sharing information about predators and food sources in ways that individual intelligence alone could not provide. Early primates, our own distant ancestors, developed the grasping hands and complex social behaviors that will eventually lead to tool use, language, and the ability to understand their own history. Their forward-facing eyes, evolved for judging distances while leaping through the forest canopy, will eventually become the basis for the depth perception that makes fine tool manipulation possible. Their enlarged temporal lobes, initially evolved for processing the complex social dynamics of primate groups, will eventually become the seat of language and abstract thought. The flowering plants that survived the extinction begin their own remarkable recovery. The relationship between mammals and flowering plants becomes increasingly sophisticated, with plants developing more nutritious seeds and fruits to attract mammalian dispersers, while mammals develop better colour vision and more efficient digestive systems to take advantage of these resources. This co-evolutionary dance will eventually produce some of the most complex ecological relationships on Earth. The irony is profound and beautiful. The catastrophe that ended the dinosaurs' reign also cleared the path for the evolution of beings capable of studying and appreciating what was lost. Every discovery of dinosaur fossils, every reconstruction of Cretaceous ecosystems, every moment of wonder at the majesty of T-Rex or Triceratops is made possible by the evolutionary cascade that began in the ashes of their extinction. We are the direct beneficiaries of that ancient catastrophe, inheriting a world shaped by disaster into the cradle of human consciousness. As the second year after impact begins, the pace of change accelerates. Mammalian species are evolving larger body sizes at rates unprecedented in the fossil record. Within just 700,000 years after the extinction, some mammals reach weights of 50 kilograms, representing a 100-fold increase over the weight of those that survived the initial catastrophe. But size is no longer the only measure of success. These larger mammals are also developing increasingly sophisticated behaviors, more efficient metabolisms, and more complex social structures. The seeds planted in the ashes of the Cretaceous world are beginning to sprout into the oak trees of the modern world. Each small mammal scurrying through the post-extinction landscape carries within its genes the potential for remarkable futures. Futures that include beings capable of music, mathematics, compassion, and the deep scientific understanding that allows us to piece together this very story. The final day before extinction was indeed the end of one world, but it was also the first day of the world that would eventually produce minds capable of understanding both the tragedy and the wonder of what transpired on that ancient morning 66 million years ago. Today, if you visit the right cliff faces in Montana, or dig carefully in the fossil beds of Colorado, you can touch the boundary between two worlds. It appears as a thin line of clay, rarely thicker than a few inches, sandwiched between layers of rock that tell the story of Earth's history. Below this line lie the remains of Triceratops, T-Rex, and countless other species that ruled the planet for 165 million years. Above it, their fossils simply vanish, as if erased by the hand of an impatient cosmic editor. This boundary layer, known to scientists as the KPG boundary, represents the most dramatic transition in the history of complex life on Earth. This thin clay layer contains the chemical signature of that final day, elevated levels of iridium, an element rare on Earth's surface but common in asteroids. Mixed with this alien metal are tiny glass spherules, shocked quartz crystals that form only under the incredible pressures of impact, and microscopic diamonds created in the brief moment when carbon was subjected to forces beyond imagination. Each handful of this boundary clay tells the story of the most catastrophic day in Earth's history, when space and Earth collided with consequences that reverberate through every living thing on the planet today. But the real legacy isn't written in chemistry or physics, it's written in the story of life itself. In every mammal that walks the earth, every bird that takes flight, and every human child that looks up at the night sky and wonders about the ancient past. We are all children of the Cretaceous extinction, products of an evolutionary explosion that was only possible because the dominant life forms of the previous era were swept away in a single catastrophic day. The very neurons firing in your brain as you process these words exist because an asteroid struck Earth 66 million years ago and created the evolutionary opportunity that led, eventually, to consciousness itself. The dinosaurs' reign may have ended, but their legacy continues in ways both obvious and subtle. Modern birds carry dinosaur DNA in every cell. They are not descendants of dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs, the only surviving branch of a family tree that once dominated the planet. Every time you see a cardinal in your backyard or hear the dawn chorus of songbirds, you are witnessing living dinosaurs that carry the genetic heritage of T-Rex and Triceratops in their bodies. The feathers that keep them warm evolved from the same structures that adorn their giant ancestors, and the behaviors they display, from complex mating dances to sophisticated parental care, echo the social dynamics of Cretaceous dinosaur communities. The flowering plants that the dinosaurs helped spread now cover the continents in ways the Cretaceous world could never have imagined. The grasses that carpet our prairies, the fruits that feed our bodies, and the flowers that delight our senses all trace their lineages back to plants that survived the Great Extinction. But more than that, the atmospheric chemistry they helped create through millions of years of photosynthesis made possible the evolution of large, warm-blooded mammals like ourselves. The very oxygen you breathe was processed by plants that lived alongside dinosaurs. Perhaps most remarkably, we live in the only moment in Earth's history when intelligent beings can piece together this story. We can read the rocks like pages in a book and understand both the magnificence of what was lost and the wonder of what emerged from that loss. We are the universe becoming conscious of its own history, capable of feeling awe at the beauty of a triceratops and grief for its passing, even across 66 million years of deep time. This capacity for empathy across geological eras is perhaps evolution's most remarkable achievement. In laboratories around the world, scientists continue to unlock new chapters of this ancient story. Recent discoveries have revealed that some dinosaurs may have survived for thousands of years longer than previously thought in isolated refugia, clinging to existence as the world around them transformed. Others have shown that the mammals of the Cretaceous were far more diverse and sophisticated than previously imagined, with some species already experimenting with the ecological strategies that would define the post-extinction world. Each new fossil, each refined analysis of that boundary clay adds depth and nuance to our understanding of the most dramatic day in Earth's history. Advanced techniques like synchrotron imaging and chemical analysis are revealing details about dinosaur physiology that would have been unimaginable just decades ago. We now know that many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, that they had complex social behaviors, and that some species showed evidence of abstract reasoning that approaches the intelligence of modern birds. We have discovered that T-Rex had excellent vision and a sophisticated sense of smell, that Triceratops lived in complex family groups with evidence of mourning rituals, and that some dinosaurs change colour seasonally like modern birds. The story of the Cretaceous extinction reminds us that change, even catastrophic change, is the one constant in life's long history. It teaches us that survival often depends not on size or strength, but on adaptability and intelligence. The mammals that inherited the Earth were not the largest or most powerful creatures of their time. They were the most flexible, the most innovative, and the most capable of rapid behavioral adaptation to changing conditions. This lesson resonates across the ages to our own era of rapid environmental change, and it whispers to us across the eons that life, even in the face of unimaginable destruction, finds a way to endure, to evolve, and to create new forms of beauty and wonder. The forests that grow today in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains are more diverse and complex than any that existed in the Cretaceous period. The mammals that graze in modern grasslands have achieved levels of social complexity that rival the most sophisticated dinosaur communities. The birds that fill our skies with song have developed acoustic abilities that surpass anything the ancient world produced. The final day was ending for the dinosaurs, but for us, it was the beginning of everything. In the growing twilight of that ancient world, as the great giants drew their last breaths and the ash settled over a transformed planet, the seeds of human consciousness were already germinating in the genes of tiny mammals huddled in their burrows. The capacity for language, for music, for mathematics, and for the deep scientific understanding that allows us to piece together this very story. All of it traces its ultimate origin to the survivors of the Chicxulub impact. Today, when we look up at the night sky, we see the same stars that witnessed the fall of the dinosaurs. But now those stars shine down on a world where their light can be consciously perceived, scientifically analyzed, and aesthetically appreciated by beings whose existence was made possible by the greatest catastrophe in the history of complex life. We are living fossils in our own right, not fossils of the body, but fossils of the mind, carrying within our consciousness the 3.8 billion year story of life's persistence, creativity, and ultimate triumph over extinction. The Cretaceous extinction was not just an ending, it was a transformation, and we, as the conscious inheritors of that transformation, carry within ourselves both the tragedy and the triumph of that ancient day. Every time we feel wonder at a museum dinosaur skeleton, every time we puzzle over the mysteries of deep time, every time we work to protect the species that share our planet today, we honor the legacy of Earth's greatest creatures and continue the evolutionary story that began in the ashes of their world. The final day before extinction was indeed the end of one world, but it was also the beginning of another, our world, shaped by catastrophe into something that could eventually produce beings capable of love, art, science, and the profound appreciation of life in all its forms. In understanding this story, we become not just observers of evolution, but conscious participants in the ongoing saga of life on Earth, carrying forward the legacy of both the lost giants and the tiny survivors who made our existence possible.